Asus 6Z Review. Taiwanese electronics maker Asus on Wednesday launched the Asus 6Z smartphone India. The flagship offering is officially known as the Zenfone 6 in other markets, but is renamed to Asus 6Z here due to a Delhi High Court directed restraint on the sale of Zen or Zenfone branded products. Asus 6Z design. For a phone with a 6.4-inch screen, 5000 mAh battery and mechanical camera module, the Asus 6Z is pretty slick. It doesn't feel bulky, though maybe we're just getting too used to oversized phones. The curved Gorilla Glass rear is not too slippery and feels pretty reassuring in the hand. The front of this phone is completely minimalist, with really nothing other than the screen to be seen. The chin is very slightly thicker than the rest of the borders, but that's only visible when the screen is on. If you look very closely, you'll see a slim earpiece at the top, and Asus has even managed to hide a tiny status LED next to it. Of course, the main attraction is the flip-up camera module. There are two cameras with a dual LED flash and laser autofocus sensor between them. When you tap a button in the camera app or trigger face recognition, the module will flip up so the camera's face forwards. The mechanism is a bit loud and it takes over a second to flip fully. You can also rotate the module manually and have it open at any angle, but more on that in the camera section below. The blue ring power button is low down on the right so it's within reach, and the volume rocker is right above it. Asus has put an unusual fourth button on the right of this phone, a multifunction smart key that is set to trigger various Google Assistant functions but can be customized to do several other things. This button isn't very reachable but has a dotted texture so you don't mistake it for anything else. There's a USB Type-C port on the bottom, and many people will be very happy to see a 3.5mm audio socket next to it. There's also a speaker which works with the earpiece as a stereo pair. The tray on the left can accommodate 2 nano SIMs and a micro SD card. Reaching all corners of the screen does require stretching, but doing so doesn't make the balance in our hand feel precarious. The 190 grams weight is distributed evenly. In-display fingerprint sensors are quite fashionable these days, but Asus has gone with a standard one on the rear, and we found it to be easy to reach. The glass rear is very easy to smudge though, and we weren't too fond of the bright metallic blue Asus logo and regulatory text on the rear either. Our review unit is the midnight black version, and in a world of gradients, patterns and bright colors, it's almost surprisingly sober. There's also a twilight silver option which is metallic silver but fades into a purplish blue. Overall, the Asus 6Z is not exactly path-breaking in terms of design and won't make people stop and take a second look, until they see you flipping the camera module up, that is. Asus 6Z performance and battery life. We had the 8GB RAM version of the Asus 6Z in for review, and we didn't have any trouble with general performance in our time with it. The display is huge, crisp, and vibrant. This phone was usable outdoors and we really appreciated the lack of a notch or hole when watching full-screen videos. HDR works automatically when playing compatible content in video apps. The sound experience is also pretty good. The two speakers are not equally balanced but sound is very loud and there's minimal distortion. The bundled headset feels a little flimsy but it's actually excellent in terms of sound quality. The Asus 6Z also supports high-res audio playback and DTS headphone, X Virtual 7.1 surround sound. With high-end hardware, it's no surprise that general usage was completely lag-free. Our benchmark tests showed this as well, with 55,965 points in Antutu as well as 3,503 and 10,629 respectively in Geekbench's single-core and multi-core tests. These scores are slightly lower than what the OnePlus 7 review and OnePlus 7 Pro 48,999 rupees review managed in our tests. The device offered to enable AI boost mode several times while we were running benchmarks, but we left it disabled for all our tests. Just to see what difference it made, we later ran Antutu again with it enabled and ended up with 87,165 points. Interestingly, this mode had no effect at all on our Geekbench scores. The phone did get a little warmer than usual when stressed under AI boost mode, but there are situations where you might be okay with this trade-off. You can enable AI boost at any time through the quick settings panel. Graphics and gaming are strong suits for the Asus 6Z. Geekbench's car chase scene ran at 36 FPS, and the Manhattan 3.1 scene nearly topped out with 57 FPS, numbers that are virtually identical to what we got with the Oppo Reno 10X Zoom review. We played a few rounds of PUBG Mobile and everything went smoothly. Battery life was very good, though Asus' claim of 2 days of non-stop use is still a little optimistic. We were able to stretch to a day and a half with moderate use, which involved some non-HDR video streaming, lots of photo and video recording, half an hour of gaming, and lots of web surfing. Our HD video loop test ran for 14 hours, 22 minutes, which is a little less than we were expecting. The Asus 6Z supports Qualcomm Quick Charge 4.0 and comes with an 18W power adapter. It charged up from 0 to 11% in 10 minutes and 70% in an hour. Asus 6Z cameras. The rotating module contains a primary 48-megapixel camera, which is unsurprisingly built around the popular Sony IMX586 sensor. It delivers 12-megapixel images by default, using 4 pixels as one to maximize the amount of light captured. This camera has an f1.79 aperture. The secondary camera has a 13-megapixel sensor with a 125-degree field of view and automatic distortion correction. Since this phone has no separate front-facing cameras, you can take selfies at the same quality and with all the same settings you'd get when taking photos with the rear cameras. It also has a dual LED flash, laser autofocus, and 3-axis electronic image stabilization. The primary camera supports an HDR+ enhanced mode as well as AI scene detection. Video recording goes up to 4K 60 FPS with the main camera and 4K 30 FPS with the secondary one. The mechanical camera module does present its share of quirks. The time it takes to flip over facing forwards adds a little delay to face recognition. You also have to wake the phone and then swipe or tap the display to trigger the cameras. The process isn't as fluid as it is on other phones. Of course, the module can't flip over at all with the 6Z lying flat on a table, so you'll end up using a pin or pattern in such situations. The module's mechanism is a bit too loud. The cavity it fits into will very quickly be filled with dust and pocket lint. We noticed an occasional pause when the camera was supposed to flip its image 180 degrees to match its physical orientation. You can manually raise and lower the module and take photos or videos with it in any position, but this capability is surprisingly varied. You have to use the volume buttons or slide the camera switcher icon in the app up or down, and there are no hints that this is possible. In panorama mode, you can take an automatic 180-degree shot with one tap of the shutter button. You can rotate the module while recording video, which is pretty cool. The most interesting feature is the motion tracking mode. Once you tap to focus on a person, the camera module will rotate itself automatically to keep them within the frame. Of course, this is only possible on one side of the frame, and they can't be moving too quickly, so this is more of an amusement than a practical feature. As for photo quality, the Asus 6Z can take some great shots. The focus was almost always perfect, and details were generally good, but we've seen better from the latest crop of phones at this price level with similar cameras and hardware. Portrait mode gave us very convincing depth. Shots taken with the wide-angle camera were usually a bit darker and had poorer detail, which is to be expected. The anti-distortion feature works well. In HDR+ enhanced mode, the camera takes multiple shots and you have to hold still, but this does make a difference to the vibrancy and exposure balance of captured shots. Low-light shots were just slightly disappointing. They were bright and objects could be discerned, but there was a tendency for shots taken at night to come out slightly blurry due to the low shutter speed used. The performance of the wide-angle camera was also reduced. There isn't any point in categorizing selfies separately. You can shoot with either of the module's two cameras, but you'll have to allow the module to flip around when you want to take a quick shot. Our sample shots came out great in the daytime and at night, and even the wide-angle camera works well on faces at arm's length. Video was actually very good. You can't switch between the standard and wide-angle cameras while shooting, but you can rotate the module. The mechanical noise is picked up, which is unavoidable, and there's also some wobble. Stabilization works very well when the module is fixed in place. 4K video clips are limited to 10 minutes at 30 FPS and 5 minutes at 60 FPS. With the primary camera, 4K video came out looking crisp and bright, though it was much darker with the wide-angle camera. Full HD footage also looked very good. Focus stayed locked on subjects in motion and we had no trouble with jitter or anything else. Verdict: Asus has thought of plenty to do with the rotating camera module and has tried to compensate for not having an immediately available front-facing camera, but it might take some getting used to. The main advantages of this design are that you get a clean, notch-free screen, and very high-quality selfies. On the downside, face recognition isn't as frictionless and the mechanical module does need to be handled with care. Asus is taking on the might of the OnePlus 7 review, and is priced slightly higher for the same configurations. Asus does offer a variant with 64GB of storage for less money than the 128GB OnePlus 7, making it the most affordable Snapdragon 855-based phone in India right now. That isn't too restrictive since this phone does have a micro SD card slot, which will be perfectly fine for many people. The Asus 6Z gives you the borderless screen and flip-up cameras that the OnePlus 7 lacks, for a slight premium. As with most value flagships, there's no wireless charging or IP rating for water and dust resistance, but you do get Gorilla Glass 6 and a 3.5mm audio socket. It will be very interesting to see how these phones stack up against the upcoming Redmi K20 Pro. This phone isn't really competing with the higher-priced OnePlus 7 Pro review, with its high-res, high-refresh rate screen, or the Oppo Reno 10X Zoom review, with its optical zoom camera, the other Snapdragon 855-powered phones available in India right now. Asus has delivered an all-rounder with a lot of great features, but it isn't a clear winner over the OnePlus 7 for most people. More aggressive pricing would have made us more likely to recommend this phone. We hope to see it popping up in Asus's frequent sales later in the year. Good about Asus 6Z. High-quality notchless screen, excellent performance, useful software features, good quality selfies. Bad about Asus 6Z. Disappointing low-light camera performance. Face recognition is slow.